Well, hello again, guys. Now, before we go any further, I was just about to press record on this video when there was the sad, concerning breaking news from Newcastle. The chief executive, Darren Eales, will step down from his position after being diagnosed with a chronic form of blood cancer. So I think all we can say for now is, to wish Darren all the very best, him and his family. Hugely concerning news today. He will continue in the role in the short term until a successor is found, and I suppose the wider implications of what it means for Newcastle, well, that's something to discuss and explore down the line. But for now, our thoughts are very much with him. And just to say, over the last couple of years, we've spoken to him 3 or 4 times on the record, and he's always been incredibly generous with his time, very honest with his answers as well. And I've referenced it a few occasions in these videos, haven't I? We had that lovely meal with him last summer in Atlanta, where he took us to his favourite restaurant there. Of course, he built that club from scratch, Atlanta United, and what a wonderful job that was in the MLS. Yeah, and we joked with him that night, for a club, Newcastle, that was battling PSR, well, the seafood platter complete with caviar and everything else was certainly very generous. So, no, that is a nice memory, and I suppose for now, it's just to say that, our thoughts are with Darren and his family, and we wish them all the very best. Now, what I want to talk about today, guys, is I want to take you inside Eddie Howe's press conference this morning. I thought it was hugely revealing. I thought it was a brilliant performance from the manager after a week in which he's been questioned, from including the likes of myself as well. I thought he'd come out and I thought he was calm. I thought he was clever. I thought he was calculated. And I thought he very skillfully put a lot back on his players. He didn't duck any question. He agreed with a lot of the criticism, with my own question to him in particular. He said, yes, I can't dispute a word you've said there. I'll get to what I said in just a moment. But there was also newsy elements to come from it as well. Alexander Isak, fresh just over my shoulder there. And yes, we are back indoors because it's blowing a gale outside in my oldest boy's bedroom, which does have that fantasy football vibe set to it. So, all is okay. But yeah, Alexander Isak, major doubt for tomorrow. We'll get to the details and the reasons as to why and whether I think he is going to play. Matt Targett, bizarrely revealed he's going to miss out tomorrow after a nasty bout of eczema, to quote David Brent. You've listed under weaknesses, eczema. Yeah, Office fans there will probably get that reference. But no, that is all for down the line. For now, it is Eddie I want to talk about. And I was in that room with him at Craven Cottage last week after the game, and he comes in and he sits with us, and I left there a little bit concerned because you guys know, this comes with a disclaimer, you guys know what I think of him. He's brilliant. I think the world of him as a man. I think the world of him as a manager. I really do. I just want to state that before I go on to say what I'm going to say, and in the context of what I've said this week. But I come away from Fulham, and there's just something, he just seemed a little bit battered, a little bit bruised in that press conference with us. And yes, of course, he is reflecting. It's 20 minutes after a really difficult afternoon for him. So you've always got to, apply the caveat of that. But normally, Eddie, by that point, has composed himself, and I use those words. He's always very calm and clever. Last weekend, he just seemed as if he was striving for answers a little bit, and that was reflective of what happened on the pitch, where he clearly is still searching for his best 11. He is looking for solutions, evidenced by the fact that he's had, over the last 2 games, 5 changes over 2 half times, and the numerous personnel shifts in terms of players in position and formation within the confines of the game itself. Now, when he came to see us this morning, he was far more clear on all of that. And he said he'd watched the match back several times against Fulham, and he was incredibly honest. And he used that word. He said, we've had some very honest conversations at the training ground this week. And my question to him was this. I said, Eddie, when you look at you over the last 2.5 years, you and your team, I'd always be able to pick the 11 week by week. It was fairly settled. You'd be able to see the patterns of play, the partnerships all over the pitch. I said, that doesn't exist this season. And also, your starting 11, you don't really seem to know it. Do you know it? How far away are you from knowing it? And he replied with, I take your point. I agree with what you've said. And he then gave a really telling answer where he said, if you give me a blank bit of paper, I could write down what my strongest 11 is. The problem I've got is that those players have to justify their place in the team. Now, and there's a lot more on the back of that. He spoke about players needing to give a Newcastle United type performance, of them not doing themselves justice last week. A really, I thought, revealing question was when he was asked about the balance of the midfield. The midfield, of course, is a major issue right now. For me, it is the key department where the team is malfunctioning. Eddie said, no, it's not about balance. It's more, it's bigger than that. There was a bigger problem. And then you take an answer a little bit further down the line where he alludes to players just needing to run, needing to apply themselves, needing to get back to basics. He said again, I keep on using this word, revealing, telling, that the focus of training had shifted this week. Now, I've already mentioned in articles at Mail Sport that James Bunce has come in and there have been a few tweaks to training, and my sources tell me that the intensity of last year isn't really there. Not that it's not intense in training, but it's not as intense for as long. Now, have they changed that this week? Has Eddie looked at that against Fulham and thought, come on, everything we're built on, intensity is our identity. Everything that made Jurgen Klopp say that, the father of heavy metal football, for Jurgen Klopp to come out last year and say even they struggle to live with Newcastle at times, and he was blown away by the intensity of them. Eddie Howe would have watched that Fulham game, and I think he would have been embarrassed and alarmed by the lack of intensity there was. No more so evidence in the first goal, where you had 4 or 5 players around the crosser and the scorer, and none of them bothered to do anything about it. I've been really strong on that this week. And just to pop in there, some people call it criticism and, some say it's over the top. It's not, because Fulham on Saturday was a culmination of 5 matches. Yes, where results were good, but Fulham wasn't a shock. It wasn't a surprise. It was all these issues coming to a head and just displaying itself in the worst way possible. So we've got to analyse that and trust us. For everything I've said on a camera or radio or podcast this week, and I spoke to my colleague Ian Ladyman on It's All Kicking Off podcast as well. I'll put the link in the description below. For everything we've said, they've said it indoors, they've said it internally this week, and they've probably said it twice as strongly and twice as vociferously even as anything we've done. And Eddie echoed that today, and he put it back on the players. And like I said, he used that phrase, if you give me a bit of paper, I can write down the strongest 11. And it felt almost like a call and a warning to those big stars. This is almost last chance saloon. You better book your ideas up, because nobody's place in the team is guaranteed. Now, I have written down on a blank bit of paper here what I believe to be Eddie Howe's strongest 11, if he was writing it down for me. Now, I'll come to that in just a moment. But yeah, I walked away from that press conference and I thought Eddie needed that. I thought he was back. I was really impressed with him this morning. Now, it's up to his players to translate that onto the pitch tomorrow. And there are some big performances needed from some big players, bearing in mind the opposition. And just to take you back to, who was he talking about? Who was it aimed at? Now, as I mentioned earlier there, I went on the Daily Mail It's All Kicking Off podcast this week, and my colleague Ian Ladyman opened up and he'd watched my YouTube video from after Monday's press conference / non-press conference after the Wimbledon game was postponed. And in that, I hadn't actually realised, it was only when Ian condensed it down and quoted it back to me, and he said, you called Anthony Gordon lazy. You said Joelinton hasn't lifted a leg since the first day of the season. You said Bruno Guimaraes was miles off it. I thought, I did say all that, and I'm not going to hide away from any of it. Just a quick little asterisk next to the Anthony Gordon is lazy. I said there was one moment in the second half where it was first half actually, it was a really lazy clearance and he did nothing about it. And for me, that was screaming alarm bells, because again, you know what I think of Anthony Gordon. But to talk through those players individually, let's address them, because those are the big names I think Eddie is speaking to. First of all, let's start with Bruno Guimaraes. I based a lot of my post-match video down at Fulham on him, and some of the analysis to come out of that was thinking, I'm calling for him to be dropped. I'm not really, but for the first time, I don't think he should be immune from prosecution, as he's been for the best part of a couple of years now. Now, of course, the large reason for that is the fact that he's been so damn good. He hasn't always been, but, on the whole, he's been a player worthy of inclusion every week. Now, this season, you can't say that's the case. And I'm not saying he needs to be dropped. I'm asking the question, there's one of 3 solutions with Bruno. Does he need to play more games, keep him in there, let him run into form? Does he actually need a rest? Or does he need to be dropped and mentally snap him out of whatever slumber it is that he's in right now? So there's Bruno Guimaraes. His sidekick next to him, Joelinton. When those two are in the team together, Newcastle are always infinitely better. Well, Joelinton, I don't have the answer to this one. I've been asked it on radio in various places this week. Bruno, I can perhaps give you a reason as to why. Joelinton, I can't. He's got his new contract. He's had a full pre-season. He played wonderfully well on the opening day, and for whatever reason, in the 5 games since, has been an absolute shadow of that. Over to you, Eddie. I don't know the reason there. The other one, Anthony Gordon. Now, again with Gordon, like Bruno, there's big mitigation. He came back late from international participation during the summer. You've got the issue of the PSR weekend when the club did explore the idea of selling him. The head was turned. I think it's fair to say that. Now, news we brought you yesterday, hugely significant news as well. Anthony Gordon, broken in my Newcastle Confidential column, again, link below the line. He's very close to signing a new contract now. And Eddie spoke about that this morning. And there was a very I use that word all the time, it was a telling press conference, guys, a telling bit at the end of his answer where he said if a new contract is what Anthony Gordon needs to get him back to the levels of last season, then so be it. And I think there's that collective want and will now on the part of the player and those inside the club that a new deal, that being sorted, will hopefully draw a line under a period which has been really unsettling for the player and allow him to get back to the player we know he can be. So there's those three. On the fringe of that, you throw in Kieran Trippier, who for me, if you're picking your best team, he's still got to be in there. And Alexander Isak as well now. Isak has got 1 goal in 6, and this brings us into the update on his injury. Now, I reported a week ago that Isak was a doubt for Fulham. He picked up a toe injury. Now, he played at Fulham. He didn't play particularly well. He was in part isolated, but, on reflection, was the injury playing more of a part than we actually thought at the time, because he had a painkilling injection in that, which wore off towards the end of the match. The toe, a scan has revealed, is actually broken. And he hasn't trained this week. In fact, he's only trained once now in a fortnight. This leaves Newcastle with a huge big decision tomorrow. If this was last season, I think he would have played. He would have been given the painkilling injection and away he would have gone. But they're trying to mitigate against longer term losses now. And James Bunce is there. And Eddie again used a phrase this morning, we've got to weigh up the long term risks to the player. So I think he will train today, and then a decision will be made on the back of that. But I don't think it's as easy as giving the injection and he plays. I think he will be in the squad. Eddie did say that the injury isn't enough for him definitely not to play. It's about weighing up that risk and what version of the player are you actually going to get. It might be, guys, that it's better off having Isak on the bench with a painkilling injection at half time so it can't wear off, and then he comes on and impacts potentially in the second half. So I think expect him to be part of the matchday squad at the very least. Whether he starts or not, we'll have to wait and see on that. But if he doesn't, again, revealing, Eddie Howe said that it would be Anthony Gordon who would deputise through the middle. Of course, Callum Wilson still injured. It really does highlight the absolute lunacy in Newcastle not going out and signing a good, viable second or third choice in the last couple of windows, when we've known for a long time now that Isak and Wilson do have these fitness issues that do tend to plague them, as good as Isak's been over the course of the past year or so. So no, it will be Anthony Gordon. Will Asula didn't get a mention there today. He come on for the last 10 minutes down at Fulham, but he wouldn't come in if Isak is out. And again, just points to that bad summer they had in the transfer window. And going back even further than that, when for me, I've said it so many times, a striker should have been signed. Now, what does my blank bit of paper reveal? I've borrowed one of my son's spelling books. Yeah, if the teacher looks in the back of this, they'll wonder what he's been doing with his time. So, I think this, with the players who are currently fit, would be Eddie Howe's best 11. Give me what you think your best 11 would be below the line, and what you believe Eddie's would be as well, because I'm not sure on the two full-back positions here. Now, here we go. Hope you can see this. I think Eddie, on the paper, would write Nick Pope in goal. I think his best right-back would be Kieran Trippier. Sharon Burns, centre-halves. Livramento, left-back. The midfield three, this is the midfield three he's always wanted from the start of last season. Tonali, Bruno and Joelinton. And then a front three, and he was asked about this morning, about Barnes and Gordon wanting to play on the same side. He said, yes, it is an issue, but it's something he's got to solve. And I think the inference there was that trying to get your best players in your 11, and that would be Gordon on the left, Isak through the middle, and Barnes on the right. Do you agree with that be your best 11? Is this potentially the team he's going to pick tomorrow against Manchester City? Because I think his best policy now is, given the gauntlet which he's laid down to them there today in no uncertain terms with us guys, and which you would have said to them as well, by the way, go out there, pick the best 11, put them on there, and if you're that good, you keep your place in the team. If not, you're going to come out. I think that might just be the 11 he plays tomorrow. It would be the 11 I would play, but like I say, the positions I'm not certain about. Certainly at full-back, where he seems determined to get one of Hall or Kelly to come in and nail down the place. They just don't seem to want to do that right now. And in midfield as well, when he talked about running, to say the players hadn't run the way they should have done last week. Well, who's the one player who solves the running issue? Bring in Sean Longstaff. And would it be Longstaff instead of Tonali? Maybe it might just be. So loads of questions going into the weekend, guys. Loads of intrigue. Again, leave your comments below the line. Hit like, hit thanks, all the rest of it. I really do appreciate you watching these videos. A brilliant start of the season. Loads of numbers, loads of interaction. I'll get through as many as I possibly can. And just to finish, to go back to the top, that we wish Darren Eales all our very best. And let's hope this weekend, for a number of reasons, Newcastle come out, do themselves justice, put on a performance in what promises to be an absolute belter of a game. It always is. Massively looking forward to it. And let's hope that come tomorrow afternoon on this video, we're reflecting on a good performance, a good game, and yeah, maybe, just maybe, a Newcastle United victory. Okay, guys, take care. Bye-bye.